Hey guys, how you doing? Today I'm going to go through just a RRSP Meltdown sort of situation that I made up, and it actually worked out quite well. And so I just want to talk about how that might work, and we'll walk through it, and hopefully it's easy to understand, and then we'll kind of talk about some other factors to really consider, because in this case, neither of these options are perfect as far as I'm concerned. And there are sort of hundreds of potential options that one could choose from. So it's all dependent on your situation. Where this was born from was months and months ago. I had watched a video that Adam had put out, and he was talking about like how he liked to structure retirement income. And I wanted to see if he thought about it differently than I did. And turns out that we're on the exact same page with that, and what we like to try and do is average out your tax rate over your lifetime in retirement. And the funny thing about that is that neither of us were ever taught this in any scenario, and we had to sort of self-teach ourselves these things, because when you work for a big investment firm in the beginning, you're never taught anything like this, because it requires people to actually take money out of their investments earlier than you would in the case of, riffing at the end and not melting it down. So there's more money to be made by not doing this in the traditional model. That's why it's not really talked about. That's why we didn't learn this. So, I mean, at the end, we had a good conversation about it. All we are ever trying to do is give good advice and, take out the big money payment that you're getting or giving to these giant institutions that don't generally have your best interests at the top of mind. So let's get into this scenario. Retired single human being, lucky enough or whatever, let's not call it lucky, they have a pension. They have a really good pension. They get to retire at 60 years old, and they have their pension. They have a bridge component to that pension. They have CPP, they have OAS, and they have $200,000 in their RSP at 60 years old. Every single one of these sources of income is completely taxable as income, so we don't really have to worry about, manipulating things that way. So at 60, in just sort of a traditional model of, you choosing to do it the way that it's timed by, the government, and you're just choosing your retirement that way, let's look at it. So you start at 60, you have your $3,000 a month for the rest of your life. From 60 to 65, you have a bridge benefit on your pension of $1,000 a month, and that's going to drop off at 65. And what a bridge is it's going to pay a little bit extra until 65, and then CPP and OAS are supposed to replace that bridge. Now in this case, so that drops off at 65. In this case, at 65, they're taking CPP and OAS, and for ease, we'll use $1,000 a month in CPP at 65 and $650 a month in OAS. I know it's a little bit higher than that right now, but I like round numbers. And they haven't touched their RSP yet. Then they get to 71. Now their RSP has grown at 4%. It's worth $296,000. So we'll assume a life expectancy of 90. So they've got 19 years to draw this down, assuming they're, raising their drawdown rate a little bit every year to match with inflation, and inflation's 2.5%, and it's growing at 4%, then they can pull out $1,501 per month from 71 until 90. But if you look at this scenario, it doesn't really make any sense, because from 60 to 65, they're getting $4,000 a month. Now at 65, they're getting $4,650 per month. And at 71 until 90, they're getting $6,151 per month. So I don't know who, wants to have their retirement like that, but I don't think too many people want to have way more money in the years where they're going to be spending less. So what we need to do is find a way to even it out and move more money into that stretch of 60 to 70 where you're probably going to be wanting to spend more. And we're going to save a lot of taxes because now their income in retirement has gone from 48,000 up to 78 or over 80. So their taxes are going to be a lot higher in their 70s and 80s. So we don't really want that. Now, let's look at the option that's going to save tax, but actually adds up to a little bit less money over time. However, it's probably going to be worth more because of the tax savings, of course, but this evens it out perfectly. So let's just look at it. We start at 60, we've got the pension and the bridge, we've got $4,000 per month. Now we're going to move over to 70 to 90, and we're going to choose that we're going to take CPP and OAS at 70 in this case. So we know that now CPP is going to pay $1,420 because it's increased by 42%, which is actually more because of inflation. So Chad and I just ran a bunch of numbers about how to calculate inflation into CPP. And we're going to do a video on that right away, which is pretty interesting. It changes the numbers quite dramatically. But in this case, let's pretend inflation doesn't exist. And you've got 884 from OAS. So from 60 to 65, you have $4,000. From 65 to 70, you have $3,000. And from 70 to 90, you have $5,304 per month. So a little over 60,000 per year from 70 to 90. So now we have to use the RSP to fill that gap. And this is where it just worked out perfect based on my 4% and the 200,000, which, I was kind of surprised. So in the years from 60 to 65, we're going to take $1,304 per month indexed to inflation from our RSP. And at 65, we're going to be left with $134,370. And now from 65 to 70, we need to generate $2,304 from our RSP. So we've got 135 almost left. We take that money out. Turns out at 70 years, you are completely depleted of your RSP, but you had a flat income of 5,304 indexed to inflation for your entire life. And now your taxes are perfectly even throughout your entire life, which is sort of the way you'd want to do it. However, what I, sort of try to emphasize a lot of times is how much can change within a 10-year span. Health changes, maybe you get an inheritance, maybe, who knows, whatever, your house burns down. I have no idea. There's an illness. All of these things can change, especially in that 10-year span where you have to make these decisions. So even if at 59 you got a financial plan that said do this, that doesn't mean that it's going to make sense 6 years from that day. And that's why I like to emphasize the fact that people should be working with somebody if these decisions can be made and are this important, because, you never know. And so that's just something that I like to think about, because in the middle of there's, probably 100 other different options of what you could do. And this is a pretty simple case where all they have is, a small RSP. There's not a whole lot of risk to this plan because they don't need the RSP to pay that much since they've got such good pension money coming in. But if you didn't have that, then it's all the more important to sort of get this planned out and getting it right. And so the last thing that I want to do is just add up how much money actually came in pre-tax. Post-tax, like I said, the first version would work worse, but in overall money coming in over your lifetime, it's a little bit more. So we'll add it up. The pension over those 30 years is paid $1,080,000, which is like, pensions are amazing. Like, every time you meet with a client that has a pension, you're like, you're pretty good already, right? You add up the pension, you add up CPP and OAS, maybe they have a spouse with CPP and OAS. If they're mortgage free, they're pretty solid no matter what. The bridge pays $60,000 in both cases. CPP in case 1 pays $300,000, and in case 2 it pays $340,800. OAS in case 1 pays $195,000 over the 25-year span, and it pays $212,160 over the 20-year span in case 2. And the only difference here is that the RSP had more time to grow, so it's going to pay out quite a bit more than the RSP in case 2. So that's going to pay out $342,228 in the first case, and in the second case it's going to pay out $78,240 in section 1, $138,240 between 65 and 70, and you're going to be left with $1,365 at 70 to just blow and like party really hard with that $1,300. So case 1, total money in $1,977,228, not quite as tax efficient. And in case 2, $1,910,805. So pretty close to one another. You know, $67,000 over 30 years isn't that much money. Case 2 will save taxes. It will even it out, but is it perfect? Certainly not for everybody. Some people might want way more in their 60s and just drop it down to just the pension and low CPP and OAS in their 70s and 80s. And if that's the case, that's fine. We can take CPP and OAS earlier. We can melt down the RSP earlier. You can party in your 60s and early 70s and then just live, you know, a very easy and fairly comfortable lifestyle for the rest of your life. So definitely personal dependent on that and situationally dependent. So just some food for thought. Hope you learned something. If you want to run through something like this with us, please feel free to reach out, info@k4financial.ca. We'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.